Hi everyone, welcome back to Divorce Den, where our goal is to destigmatize the D word and set you up for success whether you're getting divorced or separated. We are being joined today by Nicholas Crocitto, a skilled divorce mediator, and we're doing things a little different today where we are going to take a deep dive into some of the questions that you asked, specifically today about divorcing a narcissist. Will this work? If so, what are the tools and techniques that you might need? And wait until the end because maybe it won't work. So thank you so much for joining us today on Divorce Den, Nicholas. And you and I have worked together, and you've absolutely been an inspiration to me as far as the way that you help people, the way that you really navigate families moving forward in divorce and staying out of court. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to get into the main topic of the listener questions that they had about divorce mediation and speaking to you directly about that.
Yeah, I love this, and it's really something to be told that I've been an inspiration to you, because we know darn well that this lady has been an incredible inspiration to me, and a mentor, and a co-worker, and a colleague, and all the rest. So
thank you.
So happy to be here talking about something that is just as important to me as it is to Liz, and I think to many of your listeners, which is, look, you're headed into what many mental health professionals consider to be the second most difficult thing that as a human being we can encounter, second only to the death of a loved one.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a divorcee. I'm very, transparent about that with my clients, and I think they actually find it quite helpful. But it is in part what got me into this business. I began by kind of headed into life coaching and niched my way into divorce mediation because it was something that I could really speak to. It was an area in which I had gone from barely surviving to thriving.
Yeah.
And now as a mediator, it's incredibly satisfying to be able to sit with people, know exactly where they are, let them know that I once was where they are, and carry them across this bridge in the very best way possible.
I love that, because bringing your personal experience to the table isn't about you projecting it onto anybody, but speaking from a place that is from sincerity and empathy, and knowing that, I try to do the same thing. I am not divorced, but I'm a child of divorce. So you bring your perspective to it in a way that's just really unique and meaningful to families. So I appreciate that honesty and that transparency.
And I think that I know that the clients do also. It's so easy to forget as professionals because we're dealing with it and we're writing all this stuff into agreements. Then at a moment I remember, this is like the worst day of this person's week.
Yes.
As they're coming in, and I'm there for them 100% to let them know that it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this tunnel, and we're going to emerge into the light again, and life is going to continue on. Your children will still love you. I also tell them you'll be a better parent than you were before. Because I draw that out of people because, look, life challenges are what make us who we are. So
absolutely.
I mean, nobody sets out to get married and then get divorced, but it happens. It happens a lot, and it changes who we are. One of the things that I really land on with people is that, look, you're going through this challenge, and it's terrible now, but you're going to do, among other things, you're going to do something that is going to make you stronger, bigger, better, because that's what life challenges do. Like, we didn't set out to do that, but here we are. This is what's going to happen. And I just sort of set that foundation that this is not, you're going to be bruised and battered unless you go to court. Unless you go litigating.
You're going to get bruised and battered if you go to court, for sure.
This is a safe place, and it is a springboard into this next chapter of your life. You'll be handled with care, and it will be a transformative time. Anyway, it's just remarkable to see what that does to people.
And I love the sincerity of talking about this might be the worst day of their week, right? This might be the worst week of their year, but there is light at the other side. There is light at the end of the tunnel, and you know it. This is not just an expression. This is not just something that you're saying, because, again, as a child of divorce, you as a product of divorce, you know that things can be better. And one of those ways is encouraging and supporting families in ways that do not involve tearing them down in court. So if you don't mind, then we're going to get into some of the questions that we asked some of our viewers and some of the most asked questions and real concerns, like real honest concerns about people who are getting divorced and who are considering divorce mediation. And maybe they do want to save that time, money, and energy and not go to court, but they're afraid. And one of the big fears that we have heard over and over is, I'm divorcing a narcissist. And now we all know, what does the term narcissist mean? Nowadays, it gets thrown around a lot. It does. And you and I both know that. And it doesn't mean that somebody is a narcissist. Neither one of us are clinicians. We are not diagnosing anyone with narcissistic personality disorder. But there are but there are traits of narcissism, honestly, in all of us. We all have narcissistic traits because we're all sort of egocentric, right? We're trying to exhibit what it is that we want and trying to get what we want in the world and navigating the world in that way. When you're in a relationship that's high conflict, though, and that your soon-to-be ex does have those narcissistic tendencies, what are your thoughts on that type of relationship working in divorce mediation, as far as communication, as far as them coming up with resolution, as far as them working with you? You know, what's your take on someone divorcing a narcissist?
You know, this is a big one for me. I personally have a reaction to what I call like buzzwords or like the flavor of the day. I mean, I don't know, maybe it was like 10 years ago. I felt like every time I turned around, somebody was talking about how that person's being passive aggressive, and they never used the term properly.
Right, that's true.
And so somebody's, you know, barking at somebody else, and their response is, you know, you need to stop being passive aggressive. I'm like, that's not passive aggressive. They're just being aggressive. Yes. I'll give you that. But like, it's just interesting how, you know, we hear it enough on social media. We hear it here and there. As it turns out, less than 1% of people are actually diagnosed with narcissistic or whatever, narcissist personality disorder.
Yeah.
So, like, my own take on it is that I've never worked with a couple in which there weren't elevated emotions and, frankly, behavior that they wouldn't ordinarily exhibit. Maybe they're barking. Maybe they're absolutely brokenhearted and utterly contracted. So, my job as a mediator is to see that there's this thing that they're saying or this way that they're acting and bring out of them what it is that they're actually contending with. What it is that that they are thinking. Let's pull one thing out of like the marital home, let's say.
And that's a big one. People want the marital home and they dig their heels in about it.
Yeah.
So that's a good place to start.
They might, you know, what are the attributes of a narcissist? You know, so here I just looked it up. Here are some attributes of the narcissist. Need for admiration, lack of empathy, sense of entitlement, exploitive behavior, arrogance, envy. You know, I've encountered all of those as a mediator.
Yeah.
Again, I think actually there's a real danger in pigeonholing a person because then I'm not really listening to them. I'm probably sort of having an expectation about the way that they're going to treat me as a mediator, how they're going to behave, you know, in the mediation. And I tell you, that's a fork in the road. And you know, as a mediator, you have to actually listen to what they're saying. And as I said earlier, you're listening for what's behind their words.
Right. And if you're only hearing that word narcissist, there's a block. You can be blocked by that because now you're not thinking about, well, so what's the underlying concern? What is it that they're worried about? How can I help them overcome that? How can I show them a different way? Because now if you're blocked by it, thinking that they're just this narcissist, you're going to be skewed too. And our job is to help them come to a resolution that makes sense for them, as opposed to us bringing in our own preconceived notions about it.
Yeah, it really comes down to just listening.
So fully understanding that we're not diagnosing people and we don't want to have these preconceived notions about the narcissist, and we want to be there to support both of the parties and the entire family. There are people who have legitimate concerns about someone who they're divorcing and there is high conflict, whether they want to label it as narcissistic or not, and whether they maybe have exhibited those narcissistic traits. There is a level of conflict that is very high for someone who's getting divorced, and they're concerned. Is divorce mediation going to work for me? Does it make sense? Am I really going to be able to get a fair or equitable resolution if I'm divorcing somebody that is high conflict? So what are your thoughts on that?
There's a few layers to that, for sure. I mean, one thing that comes to me right off the bat is if you think dealing with difficult behavior is bad, or you're imagining that it might be bad in mediation, I can guarantee in litigation it's all going to get way worse.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, so you could probably speak to that to a greater degree than I, but like what kind of things have you seen where people are acting badly in whatever way? And again, not to pigeonhole people, in litigation, does it bring that out more?
Litigation like literally takes that little flame of agitation or conflict or anger or resentment, whatever the underlying feelings are, and it just literally adds so much gas to it, and it makes a bonfire that can sometimes just be completely out of control. So I fully agree with you that even though it could be, and it almost certainly will be, a challenge to get divorced on a good day, but divorcing somebody who is high conflict, maybe who doesn't want to get divorced, and doing it in mediation will be challenging. I don't know anybody who would lie and say that that's not going to be the case.
Yeah.
However, taking that situation and putting it in court is literally just adding fuel to the fire and asking for an absolute explosion. Not only is there going to be the time, money, and energy that's just literally going to be wasted, but just think about the feelings of resentment, of anger, of explosive tempers that happen when you're just having an argument. And now add a stranger in the room sitting in a black robe in front of you, court personnel, court officers, strangers standing around watching you, your attorney whispering in your ear while they're charging you by the hour. And think about how much pressure that puts on you. So if you think it's high conflict now, just having a conversation about maybe the marital home, how are you going to have that conversation with all of those added layers in court, in public? It can really just be completely overwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, so there's that part of it. Another thing that comes to mind for me is that if this supposed narcissist is looking for actual recognition, beyond the grandiosity and the need for admiration, there are these wrong ideas that are floating out there. And one of them is, like you want your day in court. There's been perhaps years of hurts and misalignments and friction in this marriage. And all of us, when we're in that kind of thing, are looking for some forum in which we could say, I did this and it wasn't wrong. Or they did that and it hurt me so deeply. And the whole notion of your day in court is actually like such a misnomer. That doesn't come.
Yes.
That doesn't come. Interestingly, you get a little bit more of your quote day in court in mediation.
I love that you're saying that, because people all the time think that all I need to do is get in front of the judge and then the judge will hear me and I will be validated. Yes. I will have my feelings validated. They will absolutely understand me. They will know how wrong my ex is. So I love that you're saying that, because people need to understand that, number one, when I tell you that almost never happens, I mean, I actually don't remember a time it's ever happened, and I'm not kidding. And when it does happen, when you're actually in front of the judge, you're already at trial. And you do not get to tell your story the way you think you do. You don't get to get up there and say, oh, by the way, judge, my soon-to-be ex is terrible in this way, that way, and the other way. No. There are rules of evidence, and only certain things can be presented, and then you get shut down 90% of the time. So your story is going to be honored and told in mediation in a way that it can never be in litigation. So I love that you mentioned that, because people do need to be validated. They need for their feelings and their concerns to be heard, whether they exhibit these narcissistic traits or not, and they're not going to get that in court. Yeah.
It's just sort of stifles the whole thing. It's because of the opposite. Now, I'm also not a clinician. I don't know what happens with an actual narcissist if you stifle that thing and they don't get the admiration, they don't get to say what they know to be absolutely the truth. I can tell you I've dealt with quite a range of emotions at mediations, and I do endeavor to have the couple remain future focused, but I let them know that they're heard. And I will mirror sometimes with clients, pretty often. Okay, what I think I'm hearing you say is this, and kind of give it back to them. And just that, it's remarkable how that can just sort of reduce the inflammation and then guard against that fight or flight response, and begin to develop some self-awareness. Like, it's okay for me to need 3 deep breaths and a break or a bathroom break? Yes.
That's how they're going to be able to get to the other side, right? To be able to make a clear-headed decision that is not coming from a place of rage or hurt, or they need to be, and physiologically that does make a difference. It changes your brain chemistry for that moment. It relaxes you and it allows you to think in a way that's more rational to make those decisions.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I'm going to say is, again, I'm not here to bash court, but I'm here to be honest about it. That support and that validation that you're talking about there from any of the professionals in the room, you're never getting that in court. You're never going to get anyone in the courthouse that's going to say, you know what, let's take a moment and let's think about the way our bodies are reacting or the way that our minds are reacting. We can just take a moment and think level-headed. Yeah. If anything, it is, when I said earlier about adding fuel to the fire, it just gets heightened and heightened to the point where, are you thinking straight? Are you thinking clearly? Because if you're pushed, you're already coming in there with your emotions so high. Yeah. And now you're feeling more pushed and you're feeling like you're overwhelmed. How are you making a rational decision going forward? Narcissistic tendencies or not, on your best day, you can't make those decisions. Yeah. So you providing that space in mediation, I think is just really, really important. And people need to understand that they will never get that support. Never in court. Not in litigation, not if you go to trial, not with two attorneys who are, pit bulls and fighting each other. You just can't, because that's not the environment that's creating. Yeah. It's not set up for that. It's not set up for success in that way. So mediation is just really, it's just an absolute powerhouse in ways that it can help families move forward.
It's a very different tool. I just want to say one other thing. For the person who might be listening, who is the person getting divorced from the possible or perhaps diagnosed narcissist, that person is having a really hard time too. Mm-hmm. And I think what I might say about that is that they don't want the diagnosis, if there is one, to be withdrawn, if that's the right medical term. They don't want that person's, persona and chemistry and all that stuff to change. What they want is that behavior to stop so that they can make it through a process.
Yes.
So it's important to untangle those things.
Yeah.
Can't make a diagnosis go away. We can do what we can to mitigate certain behaviors insofar as keeping this mediation on track, staying focused on the task at hand, which is addressing, in my mediations, a whole bunch of questions. Mm-hmm. How, for instance, are you going to continue to co-parent? That's kind of a big question.
Right. A question you will not be asked in court.
Yes.
It's just not going to be asked in court.
Yes.
And I don't want to interrupt you, but I do have to say, when we're speaking about the person who is divorcing this narcissist or anyone who's high conflict, that your point cannot be underestimated. The fact that they're going to be going through this too. They're going to be feeling the way that they're feeling. And again, no matter what that diagnosis is, you're going to be divorcing somebody who you perceive to be the narcissist or you perceive to be high conflict, and that's, your reality is real, right? We're not taking that away.
Yes.
And what I will tell you is, being in court, not only is it going to heighten everything for the person who's the narcissist and is feeling overwhelmed, it will do it for the person who's divorcing them tenfold. Mm-hmm. To the point where I have seen it myself in cases that I have been on and cases where I have witnessed this person with narcissistic tendencies or this person who's exhibiting these narcissistic tendencies in court, they almost get rewarded for it because they're the loudest person in the room. Mm. So then the person who's divorcing them feels invalidated and feels almost invisible, and they're taking a step back like, what just happened? Did my voice just disappear? And you know what? The truth is, it did.
It did.
No. It did, in a way that sometimes the court rewards it, like with court orders. And I'm not exaggerating. I have been on cases where my client has been issued an order of protection because the other person was so high conflict, like literally abusive. And then another court appearance with the same judge, the judge yelling at my client who was issued the order of protection, re-traumatizing my client right there in court. So thinking that divorce mediation is not going to work, I assure you, that was not working for that family in court. Just traumatizing both of the parents, the children, dragging the children into court. It was just a nightmare. So it's, in my head, I'm thinking, as hard as it is in divorce mediation, and it will be, because you're getting divorced, so it will be hard. Yeah. It will be tenfold if you're doing that in the court. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's really important to know that it's really important to remember that people can choose the divorce mediation option, even if it's high conflict.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So all of this is great, and understanding that divorce mediation can still support families in ways that the court literally never can. People do still have concerns about all of that's great, and they want to go to mediation, but they have this soon-to-be ex who is high conflict and is giving them a hard time and challenging them, and maybe even saying they don't want to get divorced, but they are willing to come into the mediation room. Is there any other way that they can be assured that they're going to receive the support that they need going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a handful of things. I might touch on the fact that sometimes these sessions can happen virtually. So just simply the layout of having people sign in from different locations is a little disarming. Mm-hmm. Being in the same room, and again, I want to keep referring to the person who's divorcing the narcissist, that could reduce their stress, which in turn will perhaps reduce the triggering effect, bringing forth those narcissist behaviors in the other party. So a virtual session is a powerful tool.
Yeah. Do you feel that people are open during virtual sessions, that you can, make headway, that they can make progress?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's something that, for me, on occasion, is a little more challenging as a mediator. In person, you can read body language. There's a real human being in front of you. When it's just a little image on the screen. But that's on me, and and with some couples, it's easy. It's like nothing. It works really well, but it's about the clients in my mind, and that's one useful tool.
That is a great tool.
Another one is caucusing, which a lot of people don't even know that's a possibility, or like, what is caucusing? And I sometimes shy away from using like real legal kind of sounding words.
Yeah.
I'll say to them, I can speak with each of you separately, and information can pass between the two of you without you necessarily being in the room at every session for the full session. So that's another option. Have you used that yourself? And how do you structure it? I'm just curious.
I think that caucusing is a really powerful tool, and it makes people feel like they can be heard and their voice be, validated, and their concerns be validated in ways that maybe they can't in front of their soon-to-be ex. Even if their soon-to-be ex has heard this 100 times, right? We talked before about the house, but if their concern is the house and they've said, well, I want the house, if there's such heightened emotions and there's maybe this high conflict relationship, the other person is only hearing, I'm taking something away. I want the house, and all I'm doing is taking away. Mm-hmm. When the person who's trying to express I want the house is trying to say, I'm concerned about where our children are going to be going to school. And they can't articulate it in a way in front of the other person because there's just such high conflict and they're always at each other. But if you caucus and you give them the space to be able to express themselves, you can now, as the mediator, start to uncover, this is what I'm concerned about.
Yes.
That's really why I want the house. That's what's important to me. Sometimes they don't even know how to articulate it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And to your point, I mentioned this earlier about sort of hearing the words that they're saying, seeing the emotional show that's happening, maybe even like, raising their voices, whatever. So you have to hear what's behind it. And to your point, sometimes you have to help them get connected to what's behind it.
Yes. And have the space to do it.
Yep. So speaking with them privately, or caucusing as we're talking about it now, is another avenue that we can use that helps that process to happen.
Yes.
And it's part of the kind of self-discovery that happens, but it's also, if you think about it, like the essence of what this particular conflict, let's say about a marital home, is what it's really about. Mm-hmm. So that's an excellent tool. Another thing is that sometimes you just need help. Mental health professional, parent coordinator. Interestingly, there's like a kind of side benefit, which is that whether this person actually is a narcissist or not, but let's just suppose that there's some drive within that person to be the center of attention, having like additional people come in will reduce inflammation in two ways. One, there'll be extra support, right? We'll be getting the help of another professional. And we might reduce inflammation by that purported narcissist feeling like, I have another person here who's assisting me.
They can still be on the stage in front of more people.
Yeah. So, and not that we would set out to design it that way, and I don't want you to think that I would design it in this manipulative way, like let's see if we can pull the wool over this person's eyes. It is about supporting the couple.
Yes, it's about giving them the support they need, and if that's what that person needs to move forward, then they
Yeah.
should have that support.
Yeah.
And again, there's a lot of concern about what the costs might be and adding these additional professionals, and maybe that's not an option. However, if you're in court, I assure you, I guarantee you, the costs will be astronomically higher than if you pull in these other support professionals.
Yeah.
So I think having those other resources are great. I think the idea of caucusing and speaking to people separately is really great, and I think that really can work.
Yeah.
But then there are times when I think that we need to be real about maybe it won't work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe divorce mediation is not right for you. And I mean, I can certainly speak to a few points, but what are your thoughts on what, maybe one or two ways that you've seen people exhibit behaviors together, or that narcissistic tendency that divorce mediation isn't going to work?
It's interesting. We keep circling back to this idea of the narcissist. I have had people who have abandoned mediation and gone to litigation.
Yep.
And I could probably cite or take guesses at the emotions that were playing in them or what their thinking patterns were. And one of them is, again, kind of a wrong idea, if you really get down to it, which was, well, if we can't get to this or get to that, we're going to court. Mm-hmm. And I say, okay, what I'm hearing is that you've got this real drive to achieve a compromise and get this paperwork done and move on with your life. Am I right? And they'll say, well, yes, that's exactly right. Okay, so if you persist in this idea of, we're going to court, you're actually going in the wrong direction. You're slowing things down.
Yes.
You're making it cost more. I use the same tactic with regard to bringing in a professional, like let's say a financial person, mental health professional for sure, but a financial person. I can say, yeah, we could do this ourselves. That's also going to cost you more,
right,
because I am not specifically a financial person.
Yes.
So yes, you have to engage them separately, and it's another retainer perhaps, or another chunk of a deposit. But it's going to be cheaper for you and better for you, and you're now reorganizing family. This is not going away. So in answer to your question, there's a lot of what some people would put in the category of coaching, or just like foundational understanding, like mirror, okay, hear what you're trying to do, what you're experiencing, what you're feeling, and you're threatening court in this instance. However, let's zoom out a little and consider this within context.
Right.
And then we'll sort of revisit your suggestion
Yep.
about what we're going to do next.
Yes.
Because,
Yeah.
and I tell people a great deal of what I do is just educating them and informing them about the realities of the circumstance that they're in. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm here.
Right. Yeah.
So that was kind of a long answer to your question, but it's always been my experience that people seeing the thing in context, or zooming out, as I call it, is so helpful to them.
Yes.
Because
sure.
I can't just keep banging up against them. I would rather give them what they need so that they, of their own accord, say, okay, I bet, all right, so let me just reset.
Yes, yep. They can.
And to go at this again. Now with better
absolutely.
information, a better mindset, a more fully informed awareness of what's happening.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I do think that that's very helpful for the most part. There are times when it won't work, though. And divorce mediation absolutely will not be right for them. And even if it's right for one, it always takes two to tango, right?
Yes.
Again, you don't have to agree to anything related to the divorce when you come to mediation. You just have to agree to come to mediation. And if you have somebody who is narcissistic or not, or they're just digging their heels in and they're saying, I'm not getting divorced, there are times when divorce mediation just is not right. Yeah. And either they don't even want to enter it, or they are digging their heels in once they're in. And having that sort of, taking that step back and having that bigger view, it does help sometimes, but sometimes it doesn't. Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's really about choice, and providing them with the choice and giving them the opportunity to make the best decisions for themselves. So I just think
That's true.
If they're not able to come to a resolution, if they're not able to actually even hear each other in a way that's respectful and be able to move forward, or if one of the parties just doesn't feel safe, right? If they don't feel safe, they don't feel heard, they don't feel validated, and they do need to move forward in court, I would never tell somebody that's completely off the table. Yeah. But what I will say is that if they're going to go to court, they really should think very carefully about how they're going to approach it. And any attorney that they hire really needs to be trauma informed. Mm-hmm. Somebody who sees it through a lens of what the court is about. They can really speak to them honestly and openly about what to expect in court and protect them in a way that's meaningful. Not just about being that pit bull attorney. Anyone can hire any pit bull attorney. You need someone who understands the nuances of any high conflict or abusive behavior, if that's what they're experiencing, and who understands the intricacies of the court system and can really help protect their client from having to be re-traumatized in court. There's only so much we can do to protect people, but we just also want to be honest that mediation, I believe, really can work for nearly anybody. Really, really can. But there are going to be people that maybe it just isn't right for, or they don't want to believe that it's right for, and they have to move out of this process and move forward in court. As long as they're doing it in a meaningful and thoughtful way, I think that they gave it their best shot.
Yeah, I think having added that perspective into this conversation, I think I would just sort of wrap up by saying I agree with you that for most people, like the vast majority, mediation is going to serve them better. And I was instructed, I think, and very well, to make sure that all of the decisions that they make are fully informed decisions. So my very first client the couple went to litigation, and I was sort of brokenhearted as a new mediator, like I failed them, they didn't get it. In truth, it is about choice. I make sure that and I did with that couple, if you go to litigation, here's what you can expect. If you stay here, you're going to have challenges, and the challenges are going to be this, but you can get through, and this will be the net result. So yes, it's not going to work for everybody, but if they make that choice, it's their choice. It's just my job to make sure they do so fully informed.
Yeah, and I think that's what it comes down to.
Yes.
So, we had a really, really great discussion. Thank you so much, Nicholas, for joining us.
You bet.
We want anyone who is thinking about getting divorced or separated to please think about staying outside of court, consider divorce mediation, come into this fully informed, and understand that even if you're divorcing somebody who is high conflict, there is hope. There is possibility. With the right divorce mediator and with the right support, you absolutely can do it. Thank you again for joining us, everyone, today on Divorce Den. If you found any value in this, please like, share, subscribe, and come and visit Nicholas Crocitto on